La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti, everyone. This is Fabrizio with my best buddy.
Hey, Fabry, it's Matt. How are you?
Not bad. Episode 40 of La Lanterna podcast. So, benvenuti, everyone. This is it's going to be an express episode, first of all, because we have a mid-match during the week. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have one right now, and then hopefully it'll go on air before the Cagliari match.
But depends how quickly I get the files over.
Exactly. And then we'll have another one towards the second part of the week, right after the match of Cagliari. Yep. And then we'll have. I'm trying to see if we can get. I think so, but I'm trying to get Raffaello because on the weekend we'll have.
We should definitely get Raffaello if we can. I'm sure he'll be on. But
so shout out to Raffaello. Hey, get ready.
That's right.
So match day. Oh shit! I forgot to look at it.
26.
26.
Is it 25? It's 26, right?
I'm thinking it's 25. I'm just trying to go fast.
Yeah, it was 26. It was 26.
Okay. Match day 26. It was, we'll do a recap right after of the Serie B one, but
yeah,
Genoa at the Marassi, Genoa defeated SPAL 3-0.
Yes.
So actually, if I remember well our predictions, I was being very conservative and just here's my Italian coming out of me, just not to jinx it. I'm going to continue to be conservative. But you were a little bit more optimistic, and I mean, you didn't I don't think you thought about the 3-0. I think you mentioned 2-0 or 2-1.
I might have had 2-0, or I think I just have just 2 goals. I can't remember if it was 2-1 or 2-0, but
3-0. So I thought it was amazing. We'll dive into the match shortly, but first time we see this great score with no goals conceded, because we did see it with Parma, mind you.
That's right.
In the first round, 3-3. But that was quite a result. Everything happened towards the end, so it's quite of strange and whatnot. But there's quite a lot of primates that how do you say first things that are happening with this match. So we have some newcomers that started. We had some finally a potent left back that started. And so on. So where should we start? I'll leave it. Where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably worth starting with how the match played out, and we knew a couple of things. I know you'd mentioned also on via Instagram that there were some kind of late breaking changes. I think Kodo was unable to start due to an injury in warmups, if I'm not mistaken. And the team, otherwise, I think it was interesting. This was the first game we saw Haps coming in as our left back. And I know that's going to be a talking point. It was pretty obvious to see, and it was fun actually to see him coming out there and playing.
Actually, let me jump in there. Somewhere on a chat, I can't remember, there's so many out there, but yeah. I remember seeing the heat map for Haps's position. And oh my God, you would see most of his the warmer part above the midline,
above the in the attacking territory, and that's exactly where it is.
Yeah, you would think he's like the left side of the center, the attacking center type of thing. But no, that's our left back going up and bringing the action up front. So that was look at that. I'm looking at it with Matt right now. Unfortunately, you guys can't see it, but it's if you look at it towards from Martinez upwards, you obviously see some spots, and actually sometimes on the right side, that's amazing. I don't know how that happened. A very small little dot there, yellow dot, but the red part is just above the midline, and that's unbelievable. In fact, if I may say, Matt, I just saw this like once Hefty comes back, and we'll talk about him as well. But
yes, we should.
I think we have set. I foresee, like, correct me if you see it differently, but I foresee left back and right back perfect also for Serie A, for the quality and for the depth that they provide to the team.
So I definitely agree with that. And I also think with all the Hefty news, I know a couple of podcasts ago, you had kind of inadvertently labeled us as Hefty Boys. And I would say if there's a running nickname for our podcast listeners, I wouldn't hate Hefty Boys as a nickname for the people that are listening to this podcast. I'm not sure if everybody who listens wants to have that be their nickname, but
imagine if we recoin it to say the Hefty Boys podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We have a very different cohort of listeners, I think, coming in.
Yeah.
They would be surprised when we're talking about Serie B instead of the Serie B. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think we should definitely talk about Hefty a little bit more. It's going to be interesting this season, and I still feel like Sabelli has done well enough in the way he's been playing. But when you think about like next season and think about, you know, the future of the squad, you've got to be pretty encouraged by both of those players. And, you know, especially with some of the news around Hefty and the fact that he is dealing with an injury. I guess maybe we should just talk about that. Like,
yeah. So I don't know if you remember the name that I posted on Instagram and Facebook, yes, and actually also Twitter, but not on the Lanterna, mind you, but on my Genoa Club Toronto one. Mm-hmm. But essentially, Hefty has been suffering with this inflammation, which is, I'm going to explain it for the best terms that I can, which is the junction of the bones in the pelvic area, okay, which is more on the pelvic /
kind of like his hip and
yeah, but inside per se, in the middle inside. So it's, you know how the waistline bone looks like two elephant ears put together type of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
The part at the bottom where they joins together, more or less what you could call like the tailbone type of thing in that area there. It's not the tailbone itself, but when you talk about the hip bones and where it joins, so they're not unified, but they're joined together, I guess, with cartilage or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it can happen. I don't know why, that some players get this inflammation. And this inflammation, when it happens, it takes forever to leave. And apparently it's so painful that the players are not even able to run more than 2 or 3 steps. Mm-hmm. And it gets so excruciating, that pain, that it's just like unbearable. But Hefty, I quoted Adriano Caorsi, which is where I read that news from, because apparently someone had bumped into him and he confirmed this quote unquote rumor, because there was no official announcement about this injury or this inflammation that he has, and he confirmed that is true. He confirmed the pain, excruciation, and so on. But he said, I'm always there whenever they need me, and even though I'm in super pain, I'll still go out there and try to do the best I can. And it was so remarkable, the fact that he has received so many complaints. Or people, complaining about his performance, and even us, we said, well, what happened? He's not the Hefty, if you remember.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been
from last year, right?
Right. Yeah, keep going.
No, sorry. So we saw this with this downfall, and we were surprised ourselves, calling us the Hefty Boys, right? So, like, I feel for the guy, and actually, I commend him for what he has. He's a trooper. And he said, I'll be here. He was the first one, once we were officially relegated and so on, that among all the players, and he was a newcomer, that said, I'm not leaving this team, and I'll continue to say, even if we were relegated, if you remember.
He was actually, even, I feel like he came out and said that even before Crescito had his own statements on it at the time.
Correct.
And it was, everyone was super, because this was a guy that we kind of unearthed him in a way. I know he played for Young Boys, which isn't a small club.
Not for Switzerland.
No. But I really felt like we kind of gave him a platform in Serie A, and with us going down, he was one of those players that seemed like we might lose him,
Yeah, being a player that he played several times also in Champions League, like,
right.
It would be obvious.
That's right.
I wouldn't have been surprised. Let's put it that way, right?
Right.
And the fact that he had this inflammation and so on, and he still shows up when he's called, and obviously his performance is felt, and that's why now we see mostly Sabelli, which thank God we have Sabelli in a way, and not like as in the left back we didn't have any backup after Payet had that had his injury.
Right.
But anyways, so yeah, I just wanted to say this. Shout out to Sylvan Hefty. He is one of a kind, and I wish all the players were with that type of mentality and that approach.
I will say too, like, I know this is kind of, maybe people want to portray themselves a certain way on social media and everything, but the reactions to that post and a couple others that were out there too were all so overwhelmingly positive in his favor. And I know a lot of fans, we've been, like you said, we've been the same way. We've kind of been wondering what's been going on. You would expect him to almost be one of the best defenders in the league this season, and he hasn't been. And I think with that news coming out, and also I think the biggest credit to him was he kind of acknowledged that people have been saying things like he's heard it too. He sees maybe some of the fan complaints, but he wasn't deterred, or maybe I'm sure there was some sort of emotional way with him and playing for the club and all that stuff, but it was very clear where his priorities were and what he was trying to do, and it was still very much with the club. And I just thought it was great to see that from him, and also great. Hopefully he felt the love from Genoa fans, and I know the next time that he does play at the Marassi, he will definitely feel that love from them, because the Gradinata will not forget that, and he was one of the favored sons of just a season ago. So absolutely, specifically for that too, because he was always such a beyond his skill, he was a very determined kind of fighting player. Is a complete opposite of in the worst of maybe what we've seen as Genoano over the years with players and asking for their shirts back and stuff. Like, he's never been like that type of a player at all. So
not at all. Absolutely. Again, like, can't wait to see him. Rumors have it that it'll take him at least till the end of this season for him to sort of get out of it. So we can only wish him the best and recoup as fast as possible. Yeah. And nice, at least nice and fresh and prepared for the upcoming season, for next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to the match, so a debut for Haps, the new purchase of, I can't remember if it was like a straight out purchase or a loan. I can't remember now. January was it's a little bit gray area of remembering who was purchased and who was on loan. Nevertheless, great performance, in my opinion, by Haps. The only thing that I remember hearing about the thing that we have to worry about him, besides that 3-day ban that he had to, endure, is essentially that he gets injured a little bit too often, maybe, perhaps, or when he does get injured, it's long-term injuries. But let's hope not. Knock on wood. And I like that. Criscito, for the love that we can have towards him. He's at the end of his career. He is another one that would put his heart. Whenever he's called, he will go there, etc. But because of his age, because of whatnot, he can't do the same type of performance that Haps have shown. So he's a great sub, because he brings in, he could come in, like, I don't know, at the 70th, 80th minute and bring that freshness or maturity or experience that might be needed from here to the end of the campaign.
As he did today. And to your earlier point, too, just to clarify, so he is on a loan with us. I do believe we have the right to buy, and I don't think it's an obligation, if I remember my facts correctly. So we can buy him if we so choose, but technically speaking, his loan will end June 30th of this season if we don't do anything about it. And the value is about 1 million euro. So it would not be a break the bank transfer if we were to make that decision.
No, exactly. And I'm sure when they do those type of preparations, the right to buy is usually at a fixed price. It's not fluctuated based on the performance.
That's true. That's right. I don't know if that's different than its market value right now, which is about 1 million.
I don't know. So going back to the match, so Haps debut. So at the center, we had the solid, usual type of duo that came in. So that was very important too. So we have our Bani and Dragozin, which kind of helps a lot when we will talk about the goal that we saw a few matches ago with Dragozin and Bani. because it was our defense that were making the goals, right? But and again, the first goal. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm probably jumping a little bit ahead. It was
you're
77th minute by a beautiful header from Dragusin himself. So the Dragon has scored.
Again.
Again, exactly. So he's going up there. Anyways, going back to our midfield now, we had our Capitano Stefano Sturaro, which is, he's been putting in quite solid performances. People thought that he was like done for his career and whatnot.
Yeah.
But, on the right side, you get him up there. And I like him, the fact that you need him when you need those matches when you need someone he's a fighter per se, right?
Yeah.
And then we saw, we haven't seen it often, but the duo Badel and Strootman. So that was quite interesting because we haven't seen it too often. But when we do see it, I think there is kind of some sort of like reassurance, I guess, on the quality that is in there. I'm not too sure what you think.
No, I mean, for me, this is probably among the strongest we can line up from a midfield perspective. And I agree with you. Like, none of these. So when you think about Badel, Strootman, Sturaro, they're all, when we were talking about the season and not having, number 10, of course, these guys aren't exactly, none of them are that characteristic themselves. But I actually think their skills, especially in this 4-3-3 type of formation, really, really, really come out well. You saw at the end of the match when Badel was being subbed off, the reception he got from Gilardino and the gratitude that he had, and it really, to me, only the picture's worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
The way that he greeted him when he came off the match, you can really understand that respect and that value that he has in Badel. And I know we don't always talk about that from him as a player, but he's a guy that obviously very defensively solid and also very capable in terms of his distribution. I think many times today with Strootman, it was maybe a little bit more memorable, some of the balls that he played in, because he had some fantastic passes in. I can't remember if one led to a goal or if one was, I think he played in, I can't remember. I don't think he played in Goodmanson, but he had a ball. He did play in Goodmanson, maybe did not lead to a goal. It was a fantastic pass. And it seemed like Strootman was able to kind of contribute more in that way with some of those excellent kind of passes. And of course, he also has his own physical and technical capability. And Sturaro, I thought, was very, very good. He was a little bit everywhere. I especially remember him in the first half and his kind of energy and what was going on there. And it sounds like a very industrious middle three, and in a way it kind of is. But I'm with you that I do think when you play these three together, and especially, when you've got Strootman and Badel and in this kind of way, and you've got some good, because obviously, as you mentioned before, Haps is coming up more. Sabelli on the opposite side is also coming up a little bit more. Yep. So it's not like these guys are kind of in an island by themselves. And I thought that for me, this entire match, when you think about it, I know we're playing SPAL, who are struggling right now. They've gone through a managerial change, but this was one of the better matches I think we've played all season. And even though the scoreline in some ways flatters us because of how we got the goals at the end of the match, I really, really felt like it was I thought it was a complete performance from the team today, personally.
No, I agree.
On Saturday, I should say.
I was going to go to the analysis of the match after, but as you just brought it up, let's continue with it. No, of course. Like I have to, this is my opinion though, but the first half, even though I do see what you are saying, it was a little bit more on the not boring side, but it was a little bit not too much happening. And the two teams were kind of studying each other. And not to forget that, I don't know what you think, but great. I think SPAL is still not they shouldn't be where they are. I mean, we're seeing that of all the teams, but nevertheless, at least I can only comment on the performances that they have against us. But when you have a number that number 44, which is the ninja guy, the Nainggolan on their side, that man, as we were fearful.
We were a little bit fearful about him before the match. Yeah,
he did make the difference, in my opinion. So what I'm trying to say is, like, without him, it's a different SPAL. With him, it's a totally superior SPAL. So what I'm trying to say is also that even though they have been quite unlucky in the last 2-3 matches with him, So that loss at 4-3, if you remember, we talked about and whatnot.
Mhm.
Even our loss today, he definitely is not the reason because they lost. Actually, he was the one that made them be kind of fearful at times in during the match, even though they didn't have necessarily too many shots on goal or whatnot, because they had in total 6 shots against 20 of ours, but
Right.
on target there was 0. Not, I'm not saying that he's a striker, because he's not, but he can score. We know that,
Of course, yeah.
and
And you're right. He definitely was. I mean, there were moments for sure where he either was bringing the ball forward or he made an excellent kind of key
exactly.
pass or something. I mean, I don't know. When I was reading like the Serie B roundup in Gazzetta dello Sport this morning and just kind of going through some of the different things, and they kind of classed the game similarly to you, where the first half was, I think you could evaluate it, and maybe people evaluate it as positive for Genoa, but maybe on the whole, not all that much breakthrough. And then you saw obviously much more in the second half, and it was, of course, kind of really punctuated by the goals at the end of the match. For me, I thought that there was something, even though, like, when I had watched the game, it felt like while we did not have as many like clear, we must score this chances, there was one opportunity, I think it was at the end of the first half, if I remember right, that Puskas had that he really probably should have scored. It's kind of like
That's
a
right.
cutback in the box.
That's right.
Um, but beyond that, there weren't a ton of like obvious, like we must score. I think that play I was talking about where Strootman had this excellent kind of long, almost curving ball in, and Goodmanson, I think their keeper came out and saved it with his head or something. Um, there were just, I felt like watching this Genoa team, they were more alive than I normally am used to watching them be when they're on the attacking front. You saw Haps's pace, and it was very evident that his
It
pace
was
was
very
causing
evident.
problems for SPAL. Um, you saw all three of our midfield players being involved. And again, like maybe people are not going to remember Batte as much because he didn't have as many of those key passes and plays as he normally would. Um, but all of them were involved in the way we were playing, and there was definitely some really big moments that were going on from all of the players there. So I thought that like the way we played in the first half was really strong, and it seemed to me a sign of things to come, even if maybe it was a little bit more even or we didn't have too many like obvious chances, because we were getting into their position. They were getting into the final third. We had a couple corners that I think there was one where like Bonnie and Dragusin were both there, and it was a great header from Spal's defender that got the ball out of the way. But it looked like a clear goal scoring chance. Like there were some moments in the first half for me that gave me an optimism that we're on top of this game. We just need to take it.
Correct.
And we really, really saw that in the second half.
Actually,
But
to add what you're saying, you're sorry. To add what you're saying is essentially you are right. It felt like we were not able to score, but it never felt like we were going to get one against.
yes, I think that's fair. Yes. Like maybe we were not quite getting there yet, but it was not as much traffic from them the opposite way, for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
You had that odd one here and there, but nothing really to worry Martinez per se. He
Yeah.
had a couple, not even saves, but taking the ball away for high balls and whatnot. But Martinez didn't really get involved too much. And indeed, we did not have even one. Well, not we, but SPAL did not even have one goal on target. Well, sorry, no shot on target.
Yes.
Having said that, so yes, you're absolutely right. The second half started again a little bit the same from the first half, and then it started to change. What happened there?
I don't know. For me, I felt like there were some. Did you see any tactical changes from Gilardino? I didn't catch that one as much. I think some people had mentioned that, but I felt like, we started to see a lot more opportunities coming in the second half. I think the big moment, obviously, was when we had our big breakthrough from the set piece. And you mentioned Dragusin's goal, and that was something that came pretty late on in the match. I think when you look at how we had kind of reacted to what was going on in that game, and some of the substitutes that we were bringing on, we did end up making a few changes that I think were important, and I think you look at guys that had kind of come in. Salcedo coming in for Puskás, I think was a really interesting one. We did change Sabelli for Voliako as well. So those changes, I think, kind of almost necessitated a little bit of a different shape, with Sabelli being, I don't know if do we play Voliako more as like a right back essentially, or how did he kind of fit into the squad? Do you remember kind of how that had fit?
I think that's what happened. I think Voliako has that particular that he is a central, but he can also play on the right.
Yeah.
Definitely think that's not necessarily the area where we had. I mean, obviously, that tactical question, the tactical change that you were asking me a little bit earlier, everything made that difference. And whether he got moved towards the center and I'm not too even sure who went, because I didn't really analyze that. That's a good question. I might really have to look into it again. But who would you put on the right? Right, like who went right?
I didn't.
Maybe Draguzin.
To me, it wasn't immediately obvious that there was some tactical change, but it is a little odd, obviously, because Voliako typically is a right back, and I don't think we would have put Bonnie out
right
in that way.
Nevertheless, that one, and also Puskás, even though he had that one or two chances, actually.
I think this is the more important, impactful kind of change. Yeah.
Once he left, and even though a lot of people are not super, happy or believers of Eddie Salcedo, I still think that what the change happened. So yes. Whether it was not the match day for Puskás, we've seen him, with those exploits, but in my opinion, and I think you can concur, is that Puskás is a better player to put him in during the match rather than the starting lineup. While, again, to your point earlier on, it was not the original choice anyways, based on nothing against the player, obviously, but because Koda had an injury during the pre-match warm-up.
Yeah.
So then he got called in and so on. But nevertheless, I think that, so again, the two changes that arrived at the 66 minutes was Voliako for Sabelli and Salcedo for Puskás. And I think that's when something really changed.
It really ignited in the match. I mean, it was really interesting because I remember at least one play you saw both Haps and Salcedo in the middle of the box and on this big kind of run that had happened. It felt like we just were really putting pressure on their defense, their back line, with the pace that those guys had and the way that they were kind of attacking it. It wasn't just that they're fast, obviously. Like I think we kept our shape and we were moving the ball really well, but it definitely felt like there was a different element to how we were attacking. And you could kind of see that too with how SPAL was reacting. At that point, it felt like we really, really had them on the ropes. And of course, about 10 minutes later, we end up getting that first goal that starts to kind of make us feel, all right, we're going to get, this is going to happen,
And to talk about that goal, we didn't finish the lineup, so I just need to finish the lineup in order to introduce that.
Yeah, sure.
We had the top three, the last three that we
very fair
to talk about is essentially Aramu was not in the called up lineup. I think they didn't announce anything, but I think there's some sort of injury or maybe just some mild injury, like, a fatigue type of thing or whatnot.
Yeah, he didn't make the squad at all, to your point.
Correct. So we had Jagiello, which I think I prefer. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I should say that every time I see Jagiello, while he is not like that super talented player, like, a Serie A top-notch player, whatnot, I still think that 80% of the times he produces what we need. So that agility, that vibe, that I don't know. What do you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, I would go. I'm with you. I'm definitely like a pro Jagiello person. I would go as far as to say, like, for me, he was maybe my man of the match, which is maybe somewhat controversial. But I we're going to talk about this goal in a second. I completely agree. Maybe this doesn't look the same in the top division if things go well or whatever. I don't think it makes any sense really even be talking about that right now because we're not in the top division. Um, but when you think about what he does and when he comes on, I honestly feel like there's a lot more involvement from him. When he's on the pitch almost all the time. And I think the biggest criticism of Aramu for us most often is that he kind of drifts in and out of games, and he's kind of a mercurial player that has a wonderful talent. And I'm not saying that he doesn't like work hard or something, but
No,
you just like don't always see his involvement in the game. And for me, just because of how Jagiello plays, he can do some of those similar things as we saw today. But he also tends to be more involved in our play, especially going forward.
To your point, like if you had to put one beside the other one, perhaps on the best days of both, maybe Aramu has an edge, maybe.
Sure, right.
But when you look at the continuous consistency, I mean, I'm not saying that this is an issue. I'm just saying that between the two, I just wanted to give a little bit more points to Jagiello based on the consistency part.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 90-minute match. You kind of need 90 minutes of productivity, and as we saw today, we had I think we actually had the full shift from him. I'm not sure he was. No, that's not true. He got subbed out at 87, but still a very well done shift by him.
Right. So we talked about the tactical change and whatnot. So now let's quickly talk about that first goal. So go on.
Yeah. So this was what we're talking, what we were alluding to. It's a free kick kind of, I'm not sure how far, it must have been like 40 yards or so away from the goal or something like that. It was situated on the left side. Jagiello is the one that ends up taking the ball. And it's in my opinion, this is a perfect free kick. This is probably 85% Jagiello and 15, 20% Dragushin. I don't want to not give Dragushin credit because he attacked the ball. He found the right timing. He placed it very, very well. He deserved, obviously, the goal. But the way this ball was put in, completely evades the entire defense from SPAL, which is their whole squad, given that it's a free kick. And it gives Dragushin an opportunity to come back and head it. It kind of whipped around and came back, and there's nothing the keeper could have done. It was a real deserved exclamation mark to what had been, I think, a fairly dominant performance up to that point. And as you say, in the last 10 minutes, it looked even more so our side than how it had been. So I thought it was an excellent delivery, an excellent finish, and for us Genoano, maybe somewhat of a sigh of relief too.
So the penalty was taken by Jagiello, and that header from Dragushin was just phenomenal. That's the perfect free kick into the box with the perfect header.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the way both of these players combined on that play was remarkable, and it was fun to see. I mean, it's a really fun goal to watch real time when you see that moment and that goal go in that way.
Now, one thing I have, I haven't had this in the last 2-3 several episodes, podcast episodes and whatnot, but I want to find out a jingle for it. Remember, sometimes I say to you, I'm going to throw you a curveball, and I should say, that jingle says curveball.
Okay.
Anyway, so here's my curveball. At a certain point, I can't remember. I'm just about to look it up, but at a certain point, we had an injury from the goalie of SPAL.
Yeah.
Where the hell did I put it? Here it is. So essentially, what happened there was something that the injury from the goalie on the SPAL side, and they replaced their goalie at the 72nd minute. Mind you, Dragushin's goal was at the 77th, so 5 minutes earlier. Why am I saying that? Because this is the sub goalie, right? Pumped meaning full of himself. Pumped Brazilian goalie. I think he's on loan from Inter or something like that. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that one. But my the curveball is, and we'll get to the other two goals as well. Do you think it would have been the same with the first goalie? The curveball.
I don't think so. And you're right. He was on loan from Inter. He was sent to Cruzeiro, I think, last year as a Brazilian player, but sent on loan from Inter to SPAL in this January transfer window. So he was kind of a newer addition, excuse me, to the SPAL squad. But I thought, for me, this is a play that for a keeper is a difficult thing to react to, because while the one thing maybe you could say, I just don't think that this would make sense. If he were able to get off of his line a little bit faster because of where the ball was, there's a chance he's able to meet it a little bit more before Dragoshin can get it. I don't think you can really fault him, because it wasn't like the ball was dangling right in front of the keeper and it was an obvious thing. You kind of need to trust your wall and the way that your defense has been set up. And honestly, SPAL this wasn't a calamity of errors on defense from SPAL. In fact, I think they maybe had two guys in the vicinity of where Dragoshin was, but just his anticipation of that ball beat them essentially to being able to mark him out of the play.
No.
And so I don't think it would have mattered that much. The header,
not on the first goal.
Yeah, not on the first goal anyway. The other two, well, maybe we can talk about those a little bit.
Okay, so leave the curveball for after.
All right.
So subs happened. We have I think after the first goal, so at the 77th, we have another change, and I want to think that was a major change. So actually, two different changes happened. I don't think the second one made a difference. But the first one I want to change. So I'm going to kind of connect back to what you said before once he got subbed, which is Batte earlier, that he was greeted both from Gilardino very well as from the Gradinata Nord. Yeah. Like a super applause that lasted like several minutes. Anyways, so Batte left for drums. Luca Lipani. So we talked about him a couple of times, mentioned him more than talked about him. He's like
a few times, yeah.
He's a playmaker from Genoa's Primavera, so under 19 squad, and he's been called up a few times in the bench on the bench. And he was about, if you remember, a couple, or maybe last episode or a couple episodes ago, yes, where he was just about to come in, but then just didn't happen because it was the last seconds of the match or whatnot, right? Uh-huh. This time he had his moment. So 5 minutes to the end, Gilardino says, "You're it. It's your turn. Go in."
Yeah.
I think that's where the tactical started to change. Nothing against Batte, because it's just a different type of tactics, right? Because you're taking away a defensive midfielder with a playmaker, not playmaker, but what we call a regista, I think. More like someone that plays the ball. He's a midfield / attack midfield, maybe? What do you think?
Maybe I should know Lipani's game a little bit more than this. I had understood him to be more in that holding midfield place, but perhaps I wasn't exactly right about that specifically. But, it's, if you think about a debut for a young player who has a very promising future, I mean, as you mentioned, he's only 17 years old. He's played with the Italian youth teams and has been capped that, or not capped, but he's been called up at least that way to kind of train and to do those things. There's no real better way to mark a debut than what happened. He comes in.
So before you go in that, there's the first goal. So let's talk about that. So there's these subs that come in first.
And then, also in that other substitution you're referring to, of course, is we kind of made a dual flip. We kind of brought in Lipani for Batte. Yep. And then we took out, it was kind of more of a defensive for an attacking substitution, with bringing in Mimo in place of Jagiello. So that happened. For me, it looked like it happened at the same time. I guess officially it was at the 85th minute and the 87th minute, maybe just because of some
correct
when those were decided on.
Correct.
But it seemed to me that it all happened at the same time. But anyway.
So before we go to the second goal, I have to commend again another great match by Albert Goodmanson.
Absolutely.
Like I'm not. I don't want to say we are Goodmanson dependent, but when he is in his right moment and right now, the quality of his play, how he tricks with his legs type of tricks, and turns around or changes position, or go forward and comes back and makes the defender trip and so on. An amazing player. So his goal is the second goal. That's why I kind of open up with him, and it was an action that was coming from the defense, a counterattack by Goodmanson himself, who just outside the box gives it to Sturtman, who shots, and is a it's a taken from the goalie, but is not able to stop it, and so the worst thing that a goalie can do. So once he saves it, it goes like ahead of him, so comes towards the penalty spot per se, and Goodmanson just right there in that specific moment, he taps it in essentially, right?
Yeah, and so this one, I think it's a reward for almost the movement that happened just before that, where we were able to find Strootman in a wonderful place. He unleashes a really powerful shot. He's not got anyone closing him down. He has that opportunity to do so. And for the keeper, I thought, seeing this in the moment, that it was a little bit unfortunate for him. He made a good save at first, but of course he kind of spills it almost directly to Goodmanson's path. And at that point, there's not very much that he can do. He's scrambling back to kind of close the line or close off the rest of the goal. And Goodmanson just needs to kind of stay composed, and he ended up whacking the hell out of the ball. And we have our second goal. You're
right. Essentially, that was a great save by the goalie. So that was part again of my. I'm going to come back to that curveball again, but great save. But unfortunately, once he saves it, he brings it back in, just feeding it directly to Goodmanson. And if you look at the action, Sturtman is totally to the left. Goodmanson is more on the center right side. So it's almost like, tennis. If you're on the total left and the ball goes on the total right, that's it. You can't catch it, essentially.
Right. That's a perfect summary, actually. Like you're done. As soon as that ball goes back to that place, and that was like, he could have hit it anywhere else, and it probably would have been cleared out by the rest of the SPAL defense. But it came straight back to Strootman or to Goodmanson, more or less, and that was it.
That was it, exactly. And this was already an injury time, so I think it was the 90th plus 2 minutes or something like that.
I think that is correct.
Okay. And then the third goal, just a couple minutes after that.
Third, yeah, so about the same.
Okay, and then the third one, which is basically seconds just before the final whistle, and to our point that we were talking about before about the debut of Lipani. So what happened?
Well, you have a Lipani assist, which is pretty awesome to see in your debut, and this is what you have to feel so excited about, because again, it's his debut. He comes on, we get 2 more goals. You're able to assist Salcedo, who, another younger player, a guy from our youth system, and it caps off the game. And it's, as a player, you can't imagine kind of ending this match and feeling any better than Lipani might have felt, having marked your debut with 2 more goals and a final assist to kind of cap off the entire play. He has, it's more or less a cakewalk in how he's presenting the ball to Salcedo, but I still think it's something that's going to give you confidence. It's something that's going to make you feel good about your introduction. And as you mentioned, hopefully this is a really big sign of things to come. He's such a young player, and I know he's going to feature more. I do want to also give a little bit of a shout out too. I think maybe this might have been out of necessity, but we also had another youth player, Seydou Fini, in the squad today, possibly because of Aramu's absence. So a 16-year-old forward who we did not see today. I'm not sure there's as much that's been written about him. Lipani has been very much touted as an interesting young prospect out of the academy, but it's kind of fun to see a few under 20 players coming in and being called up, and seeing a couple of them also making really big contributions. Consider also that Salcedo is only 21. So this is kind of, when you think about like this season and how we were hoping it might go back at the end of last year, this type of a match is the type of thing you totally wanted to see, because we got the result, and you can see also that we're building in some places. You're getting some younger players involved. Hopefully you're getting them in a place where they can feel a little bit more confident in their own game, and we can just kind of grow from there. And that's the best feeling about this match, is that we got the 3 points, but you can also see, I think progress is a really good way to summarize what we saw today. It was a very good attacking play. We were sound at the back. Our defensive players did very well. But you saw a lot of an offensive Genoa, which we don't always see. And you saw some of those younger players be a big part of that. So it was pretty fun.
So just because of the quality that came in and because of the youth, I suggest that we hear the audio commentary about the goal by Salcedo.
Opportunity for Genoa to go again, Linari. There is Salcedo. Genoa 3, SPAL 0. Goal number 3 this season for Adi Salcedo. Genoa 3, SPAL 0. Assist by Lipani to Adi Salcedo. A shot on back post. Brazil was beaten. In Genoa now are celebrating the victory.
So that was just outstanding. The assist by Lipani, and then the choice of shot even by Salcedo, which a lot of people don't even think about. But essentially, he coming from the youth squad of Genoa, then being sold by Preziosi and so on, now coming back to his original team where he grew up as a kid. And I remember reading this small interview that he had at post-match, and he took those silly things that you would think from watching the match on television. He took his jersey off, but you have to look at the fact of this kid, 21 years old, as you mentioned, playing in the team of Genoa and so on, and being able to play back again at Marassi and scoring right under the Gradinata Nord.
Was that the first time that he's probably done that in the senior team, I guess?
That is correct.
The hope with this is, and how we're building, is that we're bringing some of that focus back to the youth level. I think this is definitely something, when you think about 777 and some of their decision making and who they're putting in charge of certain positions, this is something I think that definitely Genoa fans should be feeling really optimistic about. Because when you think about some of the guys in our decision making kind of positions, you think about Spores with his ties to the Leipzig and the Red Bull model. You think about also, I think we have some guys in the executive system who come from the City Group and some of the things that are happening there. And if you think about, especially the City Group in particular, they're famous for the big transfer fees that Manchester City have had and all of these things. But what doesn't get talked about very much is that focus that they've had on investing incredibly on the youth level within the Manchester City organization. And similarly with RB Leipzig, how they've been really focused on finding players through youth academy systems, either through others in other parts of Europe, working through their sister clubs. I understand that there's some anti-modern football sentiment, and I generally am about that, and I agree with that stuff. And maybe there's a little bit of concern that we could be becoming one of those teams one of these days. But I really believe, and I am very hopeful, that this isn't just a nice little footnote that we're going to have in the next few years, but that this is going to be an increased focus. And you look at the promotion of our youth team manager, who happens to also have quite a pedigree himself, at least as a player. You consider some of the guys that were moving on. We've talked about Bocci already, and in the moment that he had today. We've talked about obviously Lipani today and his involvement in Salcedo, like there are good things that we're seeing from these youth players, and hopefully we continue to fill that group. And we're going to have to bring in players from outside, but so long as we're able to kind of grow sustainably in that way, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited. So
I agree 100%. And actually, let me tie that with an interview post-match that was done to the CEO. So I'm going to open up a little bit of different topics as well, but kind of tie in with what you just said. So Blasquez, which is the CEO, the current CEO, had an interview with one of the local televisions. And essentially, they had a few questions. One of them was regarding the match against SPAL. So he says he's so happy for the young Salcedo and specifically for Lipani, and especially for the latter one that he made his debut as in the professionals. He's happy for Michele Sbravati, who is basically the responsible of the youth team, the talent, cultivating the talent and whatnot, because he was the one that brought up these two players in different moments, of course, right? Mm-hmm. From the youth sector. And so he complimented our youth, nursery type of thing. Then they asked him a question with respects to the standings. He says the championship is still quite long, but there's 3 very important matches coming up next, and we'll talk about that shortly. But essentially, what these 3 matches that he's referring to are the one on Wednesday against Cagliari, so that's an away game, and then there's going to be 2 matches at home. So Genoa Cosenza on Monday, March 6th, and one on the weekend after that on Sunday at home against Ternana. So those are very important matches. We can talk about what kind of results or points we're expecting from these 3 matches. But he continues and say he's very happy about Gilardino, how he has built his team, and keep fighting as long as we have to, because the season is quite still long. And important is to stretch more against the 3rd spot. Then he talked again about Gilardino, and he says that they're very happy to have him in the first team as our coach, mm-hmm. because he had done very well from Primavera. Mm-hmm. It was because of Michele Sbravati, the gentleman that I spoke to you about before, and Carlo Taldo, which I think is sporting director or something, mm-hmm. that convinced Gilardino to take this chance in the first squad, because they were all impressed of what he had done before, in the youth teams and whatnot, but especially what he had done with the Primavera. Right. And we'll talk about also the Primavera if we have a minute after. So he's not surprised of how he's doing well, because he's very trusted in the soccer world, and he's reacting very well. The Italian Championship, it was another question. He says the difference with others is that a 7-7 with the other teams is a 7-7. Despite being American origin, we have many foreigners in the whole management, but it is precisely the ability to integrate different people from all over the world that allows us to adopt and live the reality in which we are. In Italy, we have found the right group. Johannes Spors found the great players, including Dragusin, Gudmundsson, and Frendrup, which we talked several times that are, and Hefty, we should say. Yeah. I'm going to add, he didn't say probably, I didn't listen to I'm just reading off on a recap of that interview. There has been some wrong purchases. So I'm thinking about an example is Yeboah, but it can happen to all sports directors. Then what else did he talk? Oh, this was strange that he talked about. There's 25 million that comes from. Sorry, it's called the parachute funding that comes for those teams that are relegated from Serie A, Serie B, in order not to get that shocker, because the revenues coming from Serie B compared to Serie A are quite different. Absolutely. So he opened up about that one by saying that parachute type of money kind of went directly to the banks, because that was already advanced by the banks, because we know who, previous owner, already knew and used that up by opening a loan against it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of sad in a way. But it was interesting that he opened it up so people are not, counting money and they're not in their pocket per se. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what else did he say? But this is another good one. He says Genoa club has provided the management and so on, the Italian group and whatnot, provided us with many sponsors. He says people say that Genoese are stingy. Well, they spend it the right way. We want to give to those who come to the stadium more than what they pay for. And many sponsors have even told us that they want to renew for next year.
That's great.
Then,
keep going.
No, go on.
No, I mean, I just think this season, if there were maybe corporations considering sponsorship or something like that, I mean, what better showing could we have? We've had every single match we've played, we've had a wonderful turnout at the Marassi. We've been very vocal. The fans are obviously very much invested in the team. We've, for the most part, traveled really well. And there's a clear passion that fans are responding to. I'm going to sneak a little barb in here since we're talking about corporations, but I did notice that I think it was Blasquez's son or someone else, because they kept panning to the press box during the game, especially at the end when we were scoring the goals, was wearing the Genoa jersey with the proper sponsor and probably the proper crest and everything else. And it's like, guys, one way to make sure you get the sponsors to renew is to sell them on the fucking shirts. So hopefully we'll get that in the near term also.
Fingers crossed for next year. Castor, please listen to us, wake up and help us out on creating a better e-commerce. Let's listen now to a quick audio sent to us from our friend Hans Otten from Amsterdam in Netherlands that gives us a recap of his opinions and about the match against SPAL.
Hello Fabrizio, my name is Hans Otten, founder and president of Genoa Club Amsterdam. Of course, I'm very happy with the victory against SPAL last Saturday. But I'm also a little worried. We mustn't forget that we scored the goals only in the 77th, 93rd and 96th minute. And that the first goal was, just like the week before in Modena, was scored by Dragusin, a defender. In my opinion, we still have an attacking problem, while probably Puskás was the most worst player of Genoa in the field. But he was all alone all the time. Genoa only plays with a maximum of 3 offensive players. This time it was Puskás in front, and behind him were Jagello and Gudmundsson, which in my opinion is too less, especially if you play at home against a lower team like SPAL. Then you need to play with at least 4 offensive players. So if you start with Puskás, you must bring, in my opinion, Salcedo with him as a second striker, and behind them Jagello and Gudmundsson. Then you have enough people in the penalty area of the opponent and you can score easily more. Now we still have the problem to score, and the striker is mostly completely alone and isolated. So I'm very happy with Mr. Gilardino. He does it very well, especially in a defensive way. In Marassi we didn't get a goal since Gilardino arrived, but in an offensive way we can do better, and we must play more offensive with more people in the penalty area of the opponent. Thank you, and Forza Genoa.
So thank you again, Hans. Just wanted to remind you that he was our guest on episode 9. That was quite a while ago, but it was interesting also to hear his perspectives from positive things and negative things also that he saw from the match. So let's quickly look at the match day 26 for City B.
Back to important stuff.
Well, no, that's not true. After your rant, no, I'm joking. Anyways, it started on Saturday with Pisa Perugia, where Pisa won 2-1. That was quite an interesting game. But the highlight of Saturday's match, Friday's match day, was Frosinone Parma. What a match!
What a match!
I don't know if you have watched it or not, but essentially it was quite the interesting. So at Frosinone, Parma is 2 up after 20 minutes. Almost a lot of it happened in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so 2-0.
There's some drama. There's some late drama too, though.
That's true. Okay, so first 20 minutes, you get 2-0 from Vasquez and Ansaldi. Then on the 25th, so minutes after the 2-0 from Parma, so being 2 up, as I mentioned, in Frosinone, then Caso, our former question mark, why did we sell him player, scored the 2-1. But 10 minutes after, still in the first half, as I mentioned, on the 35th minute, Zanimacchia scores the third goal for Parma, ending the first half at 3-1 for Parma. Second half, a few minutes in, at the 48th minute, Mulattieri actually scores the 2-3. So it kind of, you see like a resurgence from Frosinone. And I was like, what's going to happen now? And minutes after that, in fact, nervousness happens and so on. Esteves gets a red card. So 1 man down for Parma.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, oh my God, now look at this. You're going to have a full recoup from Frosinone and so on. In fact, on the 71st minute, you have Frosinone tie with Moro, 3-3. But it wasn't finished there. 2 minutes after that, Vasquez scores the fourth goal for Parma, bringing them to 4-3. And you think, okay, it's done. No, it's still continuing. The fight is not over. And actually, Parma gets a second red card at the 86th. I'm like, oh my God, this is done.
Yeah.
Meaning Frosinone is going to come, get their tie. And we know they're far up ahead of us, but, you're already thinking only about the second spot, but it ends finally, type of thing. And it ends 4-3 for Parma. So Parma, like really to the North American fan base that we had also as our guests and so on, it's a really yo-yo type of team. Like one day you do this incredible type of approach and the match day after, you're like losing against the last one type of thing. You know what I mean?
We just have to say thank you to Parma. And I will take a little bit of credit for this because I definitely called it in the last podcast. Parma had a shock loss the week before. And it's like, well, we know how good they are and how they can respond. Maybe they're going to come back and get something out of this. And they ended up getting a win. And that I came in and watched probably the last 10 minutes of that game. And after they had gotten a second red, it was just, I can't believe this is happening. It's for sure. And Buffon kind of was strong at the end. He didn't have any like amazing saves at the end of the game, but he still stepped up and got some crosses and some other balls that were kind of dicey. And obviously for us, it's an awesome result. And 9 points is still a distance, but it's starting to look like it's not as far of a distance.
12 match days left.
We have 12 match days to go. You consider we have one of those match days is playing them again, right? They have 2 of their next 3 opponents are going to be Venezia and SPAL. So they are, you would think they're going to get points out of those games. But, if we're able to do something, you kind of need them to drop points in a few specific games. And if we continue to do what we're doing, you never really know. It's still
you never know. It's still early to tell, and most likely, let's put it this way: most likely it may not happen, but nevertheless, why not hope, right?
That's right.
So continuing on match day 26, Ternana Cittadella. So Cittadella actually wins against Ternana, and Andrea Azzoli, after that match, which is the coach of Ternana, quits. What a gentleman, right?
That was a ridiculous turn of events. I couldn't believe that's what had happened to them. It was obviously a bad result for Ternana, who were trying to make sure that they were, I can't recall if they were actually in the promotion kind of position. That whole part of the table changes every single week. But to lose that match, Cittadella had been kind of up and down themselves the past few weeks. Not a good result, and Ternana are kind of really sliding right now. They're in 11th spot. having been all the way as high as I want to say second at one point in the campaign this year. So it's remarkable and also remarkable for the manager to just kind of walk away like that.
No, exactly. No, to your point of if they were, I don't think they were in the playoff, but they were just borderline of it. If they weren't at either borderline at the end, till end, or borderline just before the playoff spot, as we had Pisa and Parma both winning, so they're at 38 and 37. Anyways, so
and they were actually a correction. They were leading the whole competition after the 10th match day. So
that's right. That's right. And not to mention, it was a very weird game. They were winning 1-0. Second half, they get a red card, and that's when Cittadella wakes up and scores the 2 goals in the second half.
Yeah.
And something also weird happened with their president that turned around and started to yell against the crowd. Again, yelling off. I don't know. There's like a big protest against him. Kind of something very ugly happening there. It's a little bit of turmoil down at Terni. Anyways, Sud Tirol Palermo 1-1. So our Sud Tirol is still hanging in there with points, but has slowed down a little bit with respects to winning. So it kind of holds them a little bit back towards the top spots and whatnot. But Palermo, we've seen them, we've heard about them, and they're on a good streak. So nevertheless, that was
still a good result, I think, for Sud Tirol
on both sides. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Regina Modena, that was another match that we were looking at. It starts with Regina scoring 1, and then just before the first half, Modena ties, and I was hoping that it would kind of end that way, or that Modena would bring home the whole entirety of the 3 points. But in the second half, obviously Regina, as they are, as a strong team as they are, they managed to score the second goal in the second half and bring the 3 points home. Como Cosenza, Raffaello, I'm really sorry. I think in the few messages that once in a while we exchange to each other, he has put his heart to rest. I mean, his hopes are high because you always hope that something else is going to happen, but he's getting more and more a little bit, understanding that this season is not the best season for Cosenza, sitting at the last place. I'll just tell you the standings in a moment. But Como wins 5-1, so that was a little bit of an ugly loss for them.
It was kind of a shock loss in a way with Como. And Como have not been obviously the best themselves. They didn't have the best form coming into the match, and it was pretty big loss, unfortunately, for our friends in Cosenza.
Well, no, because it started with a goal by Como at the beginning. Then Cosenza actually tied. So
it was 1-1.
Sorry?
Yeah, it was 1-1.
So and then right at the end, in pure injury time, at the end of the first half, Cutrone scores on penalty. So you can also imagine going into the locker rooms a little bit disappointed because now you have to recoup that goal and so on. And then right at the beginning of the second half, there's an own goal bringing the lead of Como to 3-1. So at that point, I think all the ranks got busted, and in fact, in the 72nd they go 4-1, and 77th it goes 5-1. Bari Brescia, that was another one that I was hoping for Brescia to wake up, but I have even stronger and stronger feeling that this year Brescia is not going to make it. Again, hoping for them to wake up.
It doesn't look good at all for them, actually.
No, mind you, it was against Bari. Mind you, it was against Batte, so we know what Batte are capable of, and they can also bring a lot of goals in there, especially with Khedira and so on. This year, match day, he did not score, but they won 2-0 at Brescia. Then we had obviously Genoa SPAL 3-0. I'm going to leave the other one that played on Saturday last, but on Sunday. Also, Ascoli Benevento played, and they tied 0-0. The last one, which again, as I mentioned before, was played on Saturday, was against our next opponent. So it was at Venezia 0, Cagliari 0. Mind you, at the end of the match, also Venezia had a red card. I'm seeing a lot of red cards in Serie B, by the way.
I'm telling you, we have to get the tally. I think it must be one of the most red cards in any competition. Like it just, there's not this match that we saw with Frosinone and Parma was not the first match with multiple red cards in the same game, and that's such a rare thing to see.
So often, right?
And it's really happened fairly frequently. I want to say it's been like 3 or 4 games where there've been more than one red card issued. In some cases, there's been like 3 of them. So it's just like we have to get the count on that one because I think it's really it has to be a lot.
Hopefully, we can bring it to you next episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, how does that bring us to the standings? So we have Frosinone sitting tight at 50 with 55 points. Not anymore 12 points, but now 9 points down. So at 46, which includes our 1 point deduction, sitting at the second spot. So the second available spot, the second and last available spot to go directly up in Serie A. We have Genoa at 46. Then on the third spot, 3 points after, we have Batte, and 1 point after Regina. On the fourth, 1 point after, we have Südtirol at 41. Then we have Pisa sitting at 3 points below on the sixth spot. Parma 37 with Cagliari at 37. So these are the last spots available for the playoffs, and Cagliari being our next one. Then we have Palermo, Modena, Ternana, 1 point after each other, so 36, 35, 34. Then Ascoli 1 point down, together with Cittadella, which were there at the bottom, and now they're sitting comfortable at the mid-table sort of thing. Then we have Como at 31, Perugia with Venezia at the 15th spot with 29 points, Benevento sitting at 27. Which is one of the 2 spots of the playouts. SPAL sitting now at 25 together with Brescia, and their form, both of them, is looking quite awful, if I may say. And then 2 points after that, in the last spot, we have the poor Cosenza, which is still not over for them, because having the last in the table at 23 points, it's quite remarkable.
It is unbelievable, honestly.
Because essentially, I can easily say, if you look at the Benevento, which is the one closest to, but anyways, the last team in the playoffs, playouts, sorry, it's only 4 points from them, so it's not impossible to reach out to them. Or Cagliari, sorry, Venezia, which is the first one out there. Anyways, it's 6 points. So it's a lot, but it's still not impossible. It's at the very most, at the very most, I think they're aiming for the playouts at the very least.
And I have to break up a little bit. If I counted correctly here, I did do a quick count of all the red cards. I want to say we're at more than 70 red cards in the competition so far.
Oh wow! In 26 matches.
In 26 matches, if you compare,
match days, sorry.
If you look at like the top leagues throughout Europe, I think the most at the moment, and you're looking at the top divisions, like Ligue in France has like 44.
Wow, that's quite drastic. About the same match days, yeah?
I think so. Well, no, actually, that's probably true. Actually, we probably have more match days in Serie B, because I think Ligue paused during the World Cup, and we obviously continued during that period.
So like Serie A.
But it's still like an enormous amount. I actually want to say it's closer to 80 total red cards. I can give you the final kind of count, but there are several. I mean, if you go like round by round and just look, there's a couple where there's like 8 or 9 in the single round. It's unbelievable.
Well, this was supposed to be an express episode, but I just wanted to quickly talk.
Didn't do very good with that.
No, never. I just want to quickly talk about our next opponent, Cagliari. So Cagliari is going to be a tough one. We know that Ranieri is probably one of the best coaches out there in Serie B right now, if not the best coach, at least even for results, right? For what we know, that what he has accomplished in his career. So we know it's not going to be an easy match against Cagliari. At Cagliari, I'm sure there's going to be a few hundred Genoani that are going to go there. Our William, from one of our past episodes, he already showed us his ticket, so he's going over there. Good for him. And please, William, go out there and be supportive for all of us out there with you. We're all out there with you. And the next match day is going to be quite interesting. So we have quickly just a round through of all the matches that are coming up for match day 27. So we have Cosenza Regina. Hang in there, guys. I know it's going to be a derby of Calabria, and Cosenza, we root for you.
Very strongly, yeah.
Exactly. Rosso Blu will defeat Regina. Then we have Palermo Ternana, so that's going to still be interesting. A strong Palermo side against Ternana, which is in big trouble and big issues, internal issues that are happening at the moment, because I don't even think they have a coach readily available as of yet that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Parma Pisa, so that's going to be quite an interesting match. Pisa, which we have seen them not too long ago, and Parma as well, after their great win against Frosinone. It could be quite an interesting match, and they're playing at Parma. Then we have Bari Venezia, so that's another interesting match too as well. Bari, again, on a good form. They have I'm just trying to quickly look at them. They have a fairly good, steady form. 1 loss, 3 wins, and a tie. So it looks a little bit more on their side compared to what the table is telling us, but we know that Venezia, if they wake up, they're not that easy of a team to go against. Then we have Benevento Südtirol. So Benevento is sitting on the 4th last, if I'm not mistaken, against the Südtirol, the wonder team of Serie B this year. So I'm thinking, not hoping, I don't know, but I feel sympathy for them. So I can see them winning at Benevento. Cagliari, Genoa. So that's the one that we just talked about. We'll go to the predictions shortly after. And then we have Cittadella Brescia. So on the paper again, our friends from Città Calcio USA, I think they're going to be a high possibility for them to be winning this match, unless Brescia really pulls out, I don't know what, from their hat. Modena Ascoli. That's a mid to lower table type of, a mid table, actually, I may say, match. But nevertheless, I'm sure that they're hungry for points, and that could be one of those either super boring matches or very interesting as well. After that, we have Perugia Como, similar situation of the Modena Ascoli. Both of them hungry for points. Both of them kind of were sitting on the bottom, but they have totally recouped. But nevertheless, they still need those points to stay afloat. Mm-hmm. Last but not least, and that will be another one that is interesting for us to watch, will be the SPAL that we just played against, which will be playing against Frosinone.
Yeah, hopefully we see SPAL maybe get something out of that one. I feel a little bit less confident after this last match we saw, but you never know with Raja 9 goal in there. So
we'll see what happens there.
And Cagliari is interesting too. So I'm just sticking on this red card theme for no reason right now. Each of their last 6 games Cagliari played has had a red card in it, which I think is kind of remarkable. Like 6 consecutive games, one team or another picked up a red card.
You're right. So you have Venezia, Cagliari, Venezia got one. Bari, Cagliari, Cagliari got one. I'm going backwards. Cagliari, Benevento, Cagliari got one. Yep. Modena, Cagliari, Cagliari got one. Cagliari, SPAL, SPAL got one. Cittadella, Cagliari, Cittadella got one. It's like, what's going on?
What's happening here? So there are a couple of players that, from Cagliari's perspective, are not going to be eligible for the match. One of them, Genoa fans will know well. Gianluca Lapadula will not be playing against us because he was recently carded in their match against Batte. And so will not be eligible. They do have another defender who looks like a younger lad. I'm not sure if he's been a guy that plays all that much, but this guy, Giorgio Altare, picked up a second yellow in their match against Benevento.
What you're trying to say is there might be a little bit tight on the lineup.
There'll be a few players not available than they would normally have. They are getting a player back though, given all these suspensions have happened in consecutive matches. So Marco Roj, I think is how you say his name. You might remember him a little bit for being a spot player for Napoli in previous years. And he's also played for Cagliari in previous seasons as well. He had picked up a red card against Modena back in February 3rd. I think this will now be completed the 3 match weeks, so I think he will be available to kind of face us. So be kind of interesting. There are a couple players that maybe they would have normally played that are not going to be available. They're getting a player back. I don't think that really is going to be the tail of the tape as it comes to the match itself, but just given how many they've been involved in recently, it is maybe a little bit of an interesting dynamic, somewhat of a subplot or tertiary plot to the whole game.
So before wrapping the episode with our predictions and whatnot, I wanted to close up that interview with Blaskets, our CEO, when they asked him about the next match against Cagliari. So he says they are a very strong team candidate for the promotion. The coach is one of the best. We did mention that just before. We go,
yep, of course.
Yeah, we go there knowing that it will be difficult. We go there respecting them, and we with the will to win. Some of the players will. Listen to this one. Some of the unavailable will return to be available.
So, question mark?
I don't know. So I was going to put you in the spot there. So who did we have unavailable that might return? Who was out there?
Sure.
So we have Payats.
We
have Ekuban.
Yeah.
We have Aramu. We have who else? Help me out. Hefty, technically. So I don't think it's Hefty.
No, I don't think it's Hefty either.
If he said that, that means someone could be maybe not ready for the starting 11, but at least available on the bench.
I would assume also he's not talking about Coda because that would have just happened. Or Portanova for obvious reasons.
Right.
Now available. That would be a weird way of announcing that.
So maybe you are right. It could be one between. I don't think it's Payet. It sounds like Ekuban.
It has to be Ekuban. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Payet would be an interesting story. It'd be probably a headache for. Well, actually, it wouldn't be really because he's just coming back into the squad. But I think Ekuban is the player. I don't think he's going to necessarily start.
Right.
But I would be excited to see him in the team sheet. Absolutely. I think all Genoa would. I
don't know. There's still people that are still thinking that he's like this,
just this fast
player. Yeah. But I still think, and I always include that in all the chats that people talk badly about him, saying you guys are not realizing that you can, even though he is a striker, you can't base his performance on the goals sheet. On the score, how many goals he has scored and whatnot. The approach and the amount of balls activity that is happening up to the box included, with his speed and so on, and hopefully, knock on wood, that this guy still has that stamina that he had showed us so far. Because after that double operation that he had on the tendons, you never know.
It could be a different player. Yeah,
right.
I mean, I just think this guy, he seemed like Blessing's favorite player when he was our manager. And I'm not sure maybe many Genoa fans would think of that as necessarily a good thing. And I can kind of understand that perspective in a way. But I am hopeful. Obviously, he's known for physical traits. I think it's pretty disingenuous to say that he doesn't have skill. Personally, I don't really understand that part of it, but I'm hopeful that with Gilardino, with the player manager who is, Gilardino was nowhere Ekuban's build. He was not that type of. He was not Luca Toni. He wasn't that type of player. Luca Toni's not Caleb Ekuban either. Caleb Ekuban's faster than Luca Toni.
Yeah,
but I'm hopeful that you see maybe a different player and a guy that maybe I would draw some parallels to, which is also somewhat wrong, but for any of our listeners who pay attention to the championship and maybe our listeners who are paying attention to the U.S. men's national team, I'll sneak that in there, is Daryl DK, who plays right now for West Bromwich Albion. So he's very kind of strong running, powerful guy, very powerful shot, but also very clever. And pretty skilled, and I'm hopeful we maybe see a little bit more of that Ekuban. I think almost the Ekuban you saw at Trabzonspor as well at the time. So, and not that he hasn't had good games for us. Obviously, he has. We're excited for him to come back to the squad. We're not doing that because we're missing players.
I'm still keeping fingers it's him, right? But keeping cross.
I really think, because otherwise it's Payet, and I think it's too early for it to be Payet because of his injury. And also, why would you even? We just had Haps have an amazing game. Why would you even say, "Yeah, we're getting Payet's back"? Like, okay, well, what does that mean?
I don't know.
So I don't know.
I think he was still behind. I think that Payet was still behind in preparation, so I can't see being Payet. But nevertheless, it was an interesting comment by our CEO.
Yeah.
So let's go with our predictions. Go.
Well, you put me on the spot. So I think Genoa will be victorious, even in the short week. I think it's not a match to take for granted, but I also think Cagliari's sixth place position right now on the table seems to me to be somewhat flattering. They've drawn, was it their last three matches? Am I making that up?
Two.
Two of their last three. It's not been a bad run of form for them. If you look at kind of their last six, they've won two, they've drawn, or last five, they've won two, they've drawn two, they've lost one. And they had been on a good way before that, I think, in the early parts of Ranieri era. I think he came on right after the January transfer window. But I'm not so convinced of where Cagliari are at the moment right now. They've, eked out some wins. They have had matches where they've been at the advantage and have not gotten more than a point out of it. I mean, that probably sounds familiar to Genoa fans too, because that's happened to us. I am interested to see who they have. I guess it must be Pavoletti as the man coming forward for them.
Former Genoano.
Big time former Genoano. Which that would hurt if he were to come back and score. Obviously, he's in the
we don't. Listen to us, Pavoletti. You are not allowed to score. Remember.
Yeah, no score and absolutely no celebrations at all, or we're going to burn those Pavoletti jerseys that we have.
I don't think he would.
I don't think he would, because this guy was like a true Genoano. Like I honestly, I know he moved on in his career and did other things, but I remember him, and it maybe wasn't all that much time he played for Genoa, but I still feel like he was a memorable player of those teams back in the day. Anyway, I think we have a decent chance against Cagliari. I think that we probably win the match 2-1. I believe we will be in control. I don't think it's going to be an overly tense match in the end, but I do think Cagliari are going to get at least a goal from their services, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily, again, another match that we're going to have an easy go at. But I think there's something to the way that we played in this match. I really, really do. Like, I know SPAL are struggling and they're kind of in a tailspin, but before that kind of somewhat lucky flurry of goals we had at the end of the match, we were really showing our ability. And I think we deserved at least a 2-goal lead at the end of that game. And if we are able to exhibit ourselves in a similar way, it'll be interesting. We didn't talk that much about Frendrup and how he was not in the lineup, by the way. I think you remember why he was. I don't recall actually why he was not available. If he was, it wasn't a suspension.
No, I think it was like a light injury throughout the week that he had. As I said, it could have been like a fatigue moment on his muscles or whatnot, but for precautions,
I expect us to, maybe barring Coda for Puskas, if we see Coda back to being fit, I kind of think it's going to be the same lineup that we saw against SPAL, and that's
really Coda instead of Puskas.
I think if he's healthy, I think that change happens. But
unless Frendrup comes for Yagiello.
Yeah, right. You could of course see Frendrup come in. I think if Frendrup comes in, he probably comes in for Strootman, because that seems to be how Giardino envisions that kind of three.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. On the right side.
But I almost, as much as I rate Frendrup, like I said earlier in the podcast, I almost would rather us play with Sturaro and Badel and Strootman, unless we think we need a little bit more. I mean, I think we already have a good amount of energy with those players, even as old as they are, and as maybe not as pacey as they may be. And the way that our midfield worked today, I thought was very, very strong. So 2-1, that's my prediction.
Goal scorers?
I think the goal scorers, I think that I told you earlier, for me, the man of the match was Jagiello. He had a couple of plays where and he wasn't the only guy that did this. I think Goodmanson did this too, where they literally made guys fall down on the pitch. And this one guy actually came off injured because of it on SPAL's side. I don't know if you remember that play in the first half.
No.
And there's some moments where he had these amazing kind of one-touch turns. Actually, Goodmanson's been doing similar things. I think Jagiello is going to get on the score sheet in this one. I think he would have been the more clear man of the match had he had scored and not Goodmanson in this one in particular. And it's not taking away from Goodmanson. But I think it's going to be Jagiello. I do not predict another consecutive match with our center back scoring a goal, but you never know. And this is maybe a little bit of a curveball.
Three.
But I'm going to throw it back to last season against Juventus, and maybe Milan Badel gets on the score sheet again. And an unlikely situation where he finds himself in the right place and just hammers it home.
He did have a chance at goal.
He did, though. Batte. Yeah, he did. And it wasn't a terrible one. But yeah, I don't know. Just for the sake of sometimes goals come from unexpected places, I wouldn't be totally surprised. And like you saw at the end of that match, Lipani looked like he was a number 10 when he made that ball. And I think that just has to deal with how forward progressing we were as a team, where it's like, wait a minute. So you never know. And you could see a goal come from the central midfield, I think, in this game.
That's why I was talking about him being more of a playmaker type of thing, Lipani, but nevertheless.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so 2-1, Badel, and if he's playing on the starting 11, Jagiello.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so on my side, I'm going to say I like the turnaround. Mind you, was a 3 goals, fine, doesn't matter, but statistics at hand. Now, because of the match of Frosinone, we are only 1 point for the goals allowed. 1 goal above Frosinone for the goal allowed. Best defense still of Serie A. And our also goals for have been increased to 31 now. So we're not in the 20s anymore. The only one in top side of the standings is Südtirol, surprisingly anyways, but 28 for them. Mm-hmm. If we have to compare those statistically with Cagliari, they are sitting at 29 goals for and 27 against. So what I'm seeing there is they have difficulty to score as well. And their defense has way more issues than what we have.
Right.
So those numbers are also showing to me that the chances, to your point, are a lot higher on our side, even though we are going to be playing away. So we also know that playing at Cagliari is not going to be at all easy. I do see the potential of us winning again. It's important, but also I'm going to leave the door open to a possible tie. I don't want to see the tie because in the first leg, as you mentioned before, we did have that 0-0, which it was just not the correct result for what that match was showing. Because essentially, how they explain in Italian, Cagliari sat in the defense, put coach Bus in front of the goal in order to avoid any type of goals that could come in, and they succeeded. But maybe perhaps hoping that their play is going to be a lot more open, especially because of Ranieri and because of our quality and our talent there, and being able to basically put it through. So I do agree with you that it's going to be a 1-goal lead, but I think it's going to be only 1. And I'm not trying to repeat myself from the last match, but I just want to be precautious because we're still talking about a Cagliari. And at the same time, we're playing away, even though under Blessin, we were a lot better with respect to results away versus the Marassi. Now it's a little bit turning around on the other side. But nevertheless, I still do see us having the 1-0 lead, as I mentioned to you, especially because of the form that Cagliari has been showing and the form that Genoa has been at least showing us that they're capable of. So 1-0, and on the goal sheet, I am going to put Coda.
That makes sense. I mean, I think your point on Ranieri's approach for this is kind of an interesting one too, because thinking about this and hearing you say that out loud, I wasn't giving as much credence to this, but I actually really do think the midweek match with them having some players banned is maybe going to constrain them a little bit. And as much as it might sound laughable to us, they really have been playing Lapadula as one of their forwards all season long. And so they've not been able to score goals. You're not going to have one of your regular 11 guys up front, which maybe for them is a good thing because they've not been scoring goals. And, we have our own memories of Lapadula, unfortunately.
Yep.
And you also have a player in defense who is not available at the midweek. And so, I one way Ranieri could be thinking about this match is, let me just try to get a point. And so I think that for me is going to be maybe the difference maker in this one. That maybe sounds really overly prideful or optimistic against Cagliari, who, again, were one of our real rivals and still are from the promotion places. But I think if Ranieri decides to kind of try to take the air out of this match and just make sure he gets a result with a weakened side, you might see a little bit of a different game. But I don't think he will do that, actually. And I think ultimately Genoa will be on the up. But we'll see. So
this is a wrap for episode 40, Matt. This is episode 40. It was supposed to be an express. I don't know how express that is.
Express episode 100 an hour and 20 minutes later. Done.
I still do think that we're going to have a little bit of a turnaround, whether it's going to be against Cagliari or the match against Cosenza.
Yeah.
But let's hope for the best. We are recording on Sunday night, so the match is going to be in 3 days for us that we're recording right now. So maybe certain things can happen. Maybe more rumors are going to understand who might be that player that our CEO has mentioned. But let's keep our fingers crossed, hope for a great match and not like that awful match that we saw at the Marassi against Cagliari. But yeah, no, I want to let's hope to see this great Genoa that we've been playing, seeing, and cheering for, and come back home at Genova with a win. So thank you everyone for listening to us. Reach out to us if you want to join our We Are Genoa chat that we have, an English only speaking chat regarding Genoa. But you can definitely reach us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at La Lanterna Podcast, and drop a comment, likes, and whatnot. And looking forward to next match against Cagliari. And as we always say, never forget, always and only, Forza Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genuani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.